Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today I want to give you one hero for each role that I think is the best hero of that role in this current meta. The way I've figured this out is basically I've looked at Dota buff, I've played a poop ton of pubs, I've coached a bunch of people as of late, and using those, there's just various amount of information, I've put together a list of, one hero for every single role, 1 through 5, and let's get into it. By the way, guys, if you want to become absolutely broken, well, what you need to do is sign up to the gameleap website down below right now. The reason why you should do that is because every single day we post a new video there. Content that you simply just will never get on YouTube, we post every single day to the website. It's really top tier stuff. I'm very proud of what I make over there. We also have other creators, many of my great friends who are top tier Dota players, creating guides about different heroes, different roles, different items, skill builds, talent builds, everything you need to know to get to the next rank. So if you feel a little bit lost, you're a little bit stuck, click the link down below. I'll see you guys there. And now let's get into the video. Alright, coming in for the safe lane, I had a bit of a tie. I wanted to put Weaver, but honestly, the hero doesn't really seem to crush pubs. I think the reason for that is the same reason why Slark can struggle in your average player's pub, which is the fact that every single one of his spells can be optimized to a T, right? In order for Slark to be good, you sort of have to know when to click Dark Pact, when to click Pounce, when to click your ulti. Every one of these spells is very timing based. Those timings aren't very obvious. And the same applies for time lapse. Now, it's not as hard as Slark, I would say, but knowing when to use time lapse when you're dying, right? How far you can push your hero, and when you should come out of Sakuchi to auto attack, not only during the lane but also during the mid game, is a big deal. For instance, when I was watching a Slaughter laning stage against the Weaver would come out of Sakuchi right next to the Slaughter. And that's obviously a big problem, but I think people just don't really know how to play around that. So instead, I would like to recommend Medusa. The reason why I really like Medusa is she was one of the only high win rate flash farming carries that has not been obliterated in the recent patches. She currently has about a 52% win rate on Dota buff. The hero is doing well in the pro levels as well. And on top of that, it's a great laner, right? It's a very good laner, which is always nice for pubs. It prevents your team from tilting out and allows you to get off to a good start. And then you just farm. All you need to really become good at is learn how to drag camps together, learn when to use the snake, how to maximize the damage off bounces, when you should take the jungle, and then when you should take ancients, which is typically when you have Yasha, you can look to take the ancients. But until then, you just hit the creeps over and over again. Yes, it does require a little bit of knowledge about the hero. I'm sure I have a course somewhere, somewhere. And if you go check that out and watch it, you can stomp with Medusa. On top of that, I'd like to mention that Sven recently got nerfed. Luna got nerfed. TB has gotten nerfed. Naga's not very good. PL's not great. Animage, her quote-unquote counter, is also just not that good. I don't even think Animage really counters Medusa very hard. Funny enough, people will pick Animage, but then Animage loses the lane, and then Medusa has Stone Gaze, which is actually a very hard counter to Animage in teamfights. So, it's just not that bad of a matchup. Huge fan of this hero. Recommend picking it. Get good at flash farming with it, and make sure when you do pick it, watch a pro replay before you do. Coming in for the mid lane is Queen of Pain. Now, this one was probably my most questionable one of the list. To be fair, the hero currently has a 48.77% win rate. You might be saying, Speed, how could you say Quap is potentially the best mid laner of the patch with a 49% win rate? Well, the thing is, it does require you to be good at the game. The biggest problem with Quap is the hero does not inherently farm very quickly, especially if you make the mistake that most players do, which is way overcommitting to Dagger. So much so that even at level 1 people take Dagger, when it's not that good of a level 1 spell. In fact, I would say it's almost a bad level 1 spell. The spell, however, doubles in every single aspect: heal, damage, original damage, damage per tick. It basically doubles in every area. So when you have Quap level 3, you have 2 points Dagger, 1 point Scream, but at level 1, you should always have the Scream and just secure the CS. It's really powerful, and on top of that, do not put more than 2 points into the Dagger. Yes, there are some niche scenarios, like every other thing in Dota, where you can take 3 points into the Dagger, and it's legit. That's if you're going to win the lane. But on average, just max out the Scream, clear the mid wave, then clear the small camp, then clear the mid wave, and then clear the small camp. And you're going to rinse repeat this until you have a bunch of items. Then, when you have ultimate, you're going to either solo kill the mid laner, or solo kill the safe laner. It really doesn't matter. After that, you're going to rush an Orchid, and honestly, when Quap gets her level 10 talent, which is Strength, and then her level 15 talent, which is Attack Speed, and she has an Orchid BKB, not only does this hero have like 2k HP, but it shits out damage, has an Orchid, right-clicks really, really hard, scales extremely well. The problem is people overcommit with Blink, and they don't farm. This is why this hero inherently isn't that good for the average player. It's because most people do not farm enough with Quap, and when they blink into the middle of every single hero. You have to blink to the outside of the fight, you cannot overcommit, and then you'll have a lot of success on Queen of Pain. And honestly, the last thing I'd like to say about this hero is she has some of the best talents in the game. Honestly, Quap might have the best talent pool in all of Dota. Every single one of her talents are good. Don't believe me? Go take a look at the talents. Coming in at number 3 is Nightstalker. Every single time I've had this hero on my team as of late, it's tended to dominate. It just feels like no matter what, this hero has a lot of impact, and I definitely think it's something more people need to consider. First things first, this hero is currently the 7th highest win rate hero on Dota Buff, coming in at 53%, going up by 0.5 as of late, and so this hero is actually dominating. And really the main reasons for this is a couple things. Number one, the illusion carries are not nearly as good, and honestly the illusion carries tend to counter Nightstalker, as he does not like high armor heroes, heroes that man up, heroes that have illusions also deny him in the early waves, and in general, they just kind of ignore him in fights. They can often just kill him too fast. The silence, it does do a little bit, but nonetheless, the illusions being out of the meta, or, generally out of the meta, is good for Nightstalker. On top of that, he received major buffs throughout the recent patches, most notably the fact that his ultimate at level 10 when you take the talent lasts 10 seconds longer. On top of that, if you get all of the talents for his ultimate, not only does it give you a stupid amount of damage, like 100 and something, like 190 or 200, it also makes the cooldown almost permanent. In fact, if you buy an Arcane Blink or an Octarine Core, you can literally have permanent nighttime. And yeah, honestly, you can kind of imagine nowadays with the, less stacking meta and more of a skirmishing meta, that Nightstalker is going to come into favor. And I'm not trying to say you can't farm in Dota. I think a lot of the time when people are like, oh, this is a farming meta or this is a fighting meta, I think they think like you can't pick Medusa and if you do pick Medusa, like you shouldn't hit that many creeps. Or like if you pick Luna, you should buy an Axe and skirmish. And that's not the case. I just wanted to say that before I move on to more about Nightstalker. Only because I think people get this idea wrong, where Dota becomes like one or the other, when it's always more of like a fine balance. It becomes like more of like a 60-40. It's not like, I think a lot of people's heads, it's like some 90-10, 90 fighting meta, 10% farming. Like, no, it's usually like 60%, 40%, something like that. Now, if you don't know what to buy on Nightstalker, I will make a video on it very soon. I think I also made one for the website already. But nonetheless, the general basis is Echo Saber into BKB, and when you hit this timing, you just solo kill a support every single fight to start the fight. Then after that, you move on to the offlaner or the position 4, or the carry if they've been isolated. And honestly, it's just crazy how much damage this hero does, and it legit has like 2.5k HP building items that assist it in doing damage. So yeah, I think that's why Nightstalker's so good. Coming in number 4, position 4, is Jakiro. Yeah, you heard me right, Jakiro. I know that sounds weird, and you might be thinking to yourself, Speed, don't encourage stuff like this, like Jakiro's a position 5. Honestly, the more and more I watch this level of pub, the more and more I realize where, it's just like heroes like Jakiro are just good for these pubs. The hero has a stun, it mans up well, it doesn't get bursted by cores, it defends towers, it's just good. It's like the main thing for me is the fact that this hero is just a reliably good laner. Like, it's just so consistent. And that's nice to have in pubs, even as a position 4, right? The reason why it's usually a 5 and recommended to be a 5 is because it doesn't necessarily take that much farm priority, even though we'll talk about why it can. But it'll also because this hero is really good at level 1. And so if you play it in the off lane and the wave starts right next to their tier 1, you kind of lose out on a little bit of your level 1 spike, if that makes sense. It's kind of like Undying 4, that's the problem with that. But still, I actually had a rank 60 position 4 player pick this on my team recently, and while we did lose the game, we were actually winning the game. We were up 3, 4, 5k net worth for the majority of the match, and what he did was he maxed out his Q and Z, right, the dual breath and liquid fire. He just kind of ran down the lane, split pushed, and pressured towers. And if the enemy team responded, okay, great, it's not the end of the world. Often he would avoid the gank and make them waste their time, and if they didn't respond, he would just take their towers. And we actually pressured their high ground like 13 or 14 minutes in and took half of their tier 3. It's that good. It really is just such a great laner. It has really good mid-game tempo. It's such a nice team fighter. And so Jakiro for me is just one of those heroes that's really consistent. It's a good position 4. Yes, I really do believe it's a good position 4. When it's picked with most of the melee position 3s, right, offlaners that you're used to seeing, it's an incredibly good lane, right, with Mars, with Axe, it's good with Centaur, it's good with Nightstalker. It's just good. It has a lot of, right, Sankey, a lot of synergy. And so yeah, I absolutely recommend picking this hero, and it was also just recently buffed again. And finally, last but not least, coming in at number 5, we have Silencer or Omni Knight. Now I know, you might be saying, Speed, I thought you just destroyed Omni Knight in your recent patch video. Well, I would like to say that there's a couple things I'd actually like to say. Number 1, this hero is still fine, especially the lower the MMR you go. If people forget to purge Heavenly Grace, which is something that's very consistently happening right now, the hero's actually not bad. It's been getting picked a lot against me, and even with me, and honestly, the hero seems to be doing fine. When the enemy team has no purges from the 10 to 20 minute mark, Heavenly Grace is still a stupid broken spell. And therefore, there's value in this hero. I will say that, there's value. However, if he has some bad matchups, if there's an Oracle on the enemy team, if there's a Shadow Demon on the enemy team, if there's an Invoker on the enemy team, if there's any hero that can get a Dispel or buy a Dispel, right, buy a Eul's, like Mirana, Nyx Assassin, Pango, you name it, and they use it on the Heavenly Grace target, Omni Knight loses all of its value, and that's still the case. But the thing is, most people are forgetting to do this, and so Heavenly Grace still stands as one of the best abilities in Dota if the enemy team is incompetent. And frankly, you can play around that, you just can't. But for the last hero I'd actually like to talk about is Silencer. This hero is the highest win rate hero in Dota right now. And honestly, when I watch it in pubs, it's not surprising to me at all. This hero's a really solid laner. In fact, if you take your Q and you take your W, or even if you take your Q and your E, you do a stupid amount of damage. The biggest advantage of Silencer right now is his Q. The fact that this hero's Q is doubled when they're silenced, right? The damage of the Arcane Curse is double when the opponent is silenced, just makes it do a stupid amount of damage. On top of that, the slow is also doubled. So anytime you Q someone and then you global, they can't even move. It's basically a 40% slow that does 80 damage per second for 6 seconds. And on top of that, if they happen to cast a spell, which almost everyone will, they take even more damage. They take even more damage. And so you can imagine in team fights, when most players don't have the awareness to even see, who's walking right up to them, that's not even easy. You can imagine that they're probably not going to be paying attention to whether or not they're arcane cursed. And it's just going to kill them in fights, especially if you global, especially if you last word them, and it's doubled in damage. And on top of that, I don't think people even realize Silencer has a 15 arcane curse damage talent at level 10, which is kind of insane because that's almost 50% damage buff, right? 50% of a damage buff to the maxed out ability at level 10. So essentially, what you want to do is you want to max out Arcane Curse and Last Word, maybe take a point in Glaives if you want to try to trade in the laning stage, and then, right, global when you can, take the level 10 talent, and you just pump damage. You just pump damage. On top of that, global is stupid good in pubs. It always has been. Like, that hasn't changed. I just want to mention, like, people just forget to buy Dispels and don't buy BKB, so they kind of just get annihilated. And so yeah, all in all, Arcane Curse is in the best place it's ever been in its life, except for the patch when it was like 80 mana to cast this shit, which was kind of stupid. But yeah, Arcane Curse is an incredibly good spell right now. I cannot recommend this hero more as a position 5. It's also fine as a mid and an off laner. It's honestly not a bad safe laner or a position 4 either. So if you did want to play it in other roles, I recommend trying it anyway. But as a 5, just maxing the Q, getting the Q talent, and then globaling when you Q people actually makes you do 2, 3, 4, 5,000 damage in a fight. And yeah, that's pretty good. But nonetheless, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, smash the like button and subscribe, and stay broken, my friends.
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, before you tune out, subscribe to the GameLeap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.